Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Beyond Dynamic Tariffs, How to Unlock Real Value for End Users. We are here today to focus on the case for dynamic tariffs, talk you through risks and challenges, but also the benefits. We will give you a perspective of a smarter alternative, and of course, there will be a Q&A session, so please send us all your questions and we will answer them at the end. But first of all, please give a very warm welcome to Lennart Verheijen, advisor at Codibly, senior consultant for energy transition and immobility at Krachtwerk. Hi, Lennart. Okay, before we go to
Hi.
the...
Thank you for the introduction. Very good pronunciation.
That's great because I was learning how to pronounce it. But before we begin, just let me take you on a small journey. Over a decade ago, we at Codibly set out on a mission, not to create our own products, but to help energy companies shape the future of e-mobility and renewable energy through technology. We quickly realized that while the energy sector was evolving, one major challenge remained: interoperability. Different systems, different protocols, different platforms. Nothing spoke the same language. That's where we found our niche. Today, Codibly is not just a software development company. We are an ultimate interoperability partner in the energy space. We work behind the scenes, empowering our clients with their own digital products and solutions, whether it's managing grid flexibility, optimizing energy storage, or enabling seamless EV charging. We specialize in a few key areas like demand response and market integration. We help clients integrate with major aggregators, virtual power plants, ensuring compliance with OpenADR, IEEE, and CTA standards and protocols. Energy management systems. We build platforms that give companies full control over battery storage, PV systems, and smart home devices, not just monitoring, but actually steering them for optimal performance. EV charging solutions, from OCPP compliance to building charge point management platforms. We ensure smooth communication between charging stations, vehicles, and the grid. And last but not least, energy trading. We develop trading applications and digital tools that help our clients optimize their market participation and unlock new revenue stream. That's our story. Now, let's get to the point why we are here today. So, Lennart, let's start with the basics. What makes dynamic energy tariffs alternative in today's energy landscape?
I think you're going to put up the new slide. So let me start with just a very short introduction of myself. So my name is Lennart Verheijen. Indeed, as you mentioned, I work at Krachtwerk, and at Krachtwerk we do consulting on energy trading, energy transport, and e-mobility, which aligns very well with what Codibly does. Hence the senior of the advisor role at Codibly. In my LinkedIn bubble, there's a lot of conversations about dynamic energy tariffs, and there's also a lot of conversations in EV charging that all charge stations should apply dynamic energy rates for end users. And there's a lot of merits to that, but it's in my mind, it's also a little bit of a single-sided conversation that dynamic energy tariffs are the holy grail to the energy transition. Though that might be true, I also have some doubts with that, and I don't claim to be the expert, but I do like to get this conversation going. So I was very happy to be invited for this webinar and that we could do it in this way. But I think it's good, and this is why we prepared a few slides, that before we start talking about dynamic energy tariffs, that we make clear what we actually mean with them, because that is, well, clear to people who are experts in the field, but not always clear to people who not expert in the field. And for that, I think it's good to start with the energy market, because that's always what people say. Dynamic energy tariffs are the real rates on the energy market. Well, the energy market doesn't exist. There are many energy markets. As you can see here in this picture, and actually the majority of energy is not traded on one of these markets. It's traded in bilateral deals over the counter. This is what we call these forward markets. So if I, as a consumer, say to a supplier, hey, I want a 3-year contract, then at that point, the supplier may already purchase 3 years of energy in advance. That's in this forward market. And don't know the exact numbers, but roughly 60 to 70% of all the energy is actually, all the electricity is actually traded in these forward markets. And then we have the day ahead market. This is the most well-known one, where there's a daily auction for every hour for the next day. And this is actually going to be every 15 minutes in the course of this year, if all tests go well. Where we say, okay, we buy the additional energy that we need for tomorrow. And then we have, during the day, you can also do some trading. So that's intraday, where I do one-on-one deals. I have a little bit of shortage, and there's more demand than I thought. And then you get to the imbalance market, saying, hey, okay, in reality, the energy consumption is a little bit different than I thought. Well, I'm not going to explain all of this, but basically what you see here, the whole point of all these markets is to balance the amount of demand and supply in the European electricity grid and the national grids. Because if there's a disbalance, even for a short while, we will have a European blackout. And all that these markets basically represent is we're trying to achieve an equilibrium, and all the main difference is what time scale do you do that. So forward markets is years ahead, months ahead, weeks ahead, sometimes days ahead, then per hour, then per 5 minutes, and then at some point more you get to the right, even per second. Now, what do we then mean when we talk about dynamic energy tariffs? Oksana, maybe you can highlight that in the slide. Then we focus on what is called the day ahead market. So this is these hour prices, and again, it's going to be 15-minute prices that we say, okay, we have these hour prices, and we give this to an end user. And this end user could be the user of a charge station, could be a consumer at home, or could be a professional supplier, a factory. Maybe it's good to go to the next slide, Oksana.
Yeah, sure. And just give me a second, because
So yeah, this is what is highlighted. This is what dynamic energy tariffs reflect. Yeah.
Sorry.
So how does this work? There's I already mentioned there's a daily auction system, and for those energy experts that are in the call, I'm sorry for going into. You already know this. This is not a real picture. This is just to explain it. So what happens is on the x-axis here you see the demand for tomorrow. In this case, for example, between 2 and 3 in the afternoon. So there's an auction saying, okay, we need this much demand, and we know how much demand we need because we have all these energy suppliers and the balance responsible parties behind them that have predicted for all their users, okay, this is how much energy we need. And there's a lot of demand for it, and there's of course supply, and this supply, well, the cheapest form of energy production we have is wind on land. So that costs some money, but we cannot fulfill all the supply with only wind on land. So actually now the wind at sea, which is a little bit more expensive because of the maintenance, comes into play, and then the solar power, and then we have the gas-fired power plants, and then the coal-fired power plants. Well, as you can see, we don't need the coal-fired power plants. And the price for the gas-powered power plant is then what determines the price for everybody. And this makes sense, because why would I sell, if somebody's going to pay, I don't know, 20 cents for kilowatt hour, then why as a wind producer would I sell it for less? It makes sense, it's competitive. And this is how in this example, gas sets the price for electricity between 2 and 3. But maybe for another time of day, maybe Oksana, you can go to the next one. There is actually, well, just an example that I made up. Between 10 and 11 in the evening, there's a little bit less demand, and there's more wind. There's more wind power. And now what happens is that you see wind is not competing with gas plants, but it's competing with other wind. And then you see that the price is plummeting and is significantly cheaper. And it can even get, well, worse or better, depending on how you look at it. Oksana, next, please. That due to energy subsidies or that wind producers sell their green certificates, that they can still even make money when prices are negative. For now, for instance, we have the subsidies that for all the wind parks you get money regardless of there's a certain amount of money that you get for every kilowatt hour that you produce, which means that even at negative prices you could still make a margin. And this is why we now also see, actually we see it more and more often, negative prices on the energy market. This is of course appealing, and this is an example where you don't have negative prices, but you can see here the result. There's a different price for every hour because every hour has its own auction. And here, well, was the 1st of January of this year. Prices were zero at 5 o'clock between 5 and 6. This is an example of the Netherlands, but you have similar pictures everywhere in Europe. Well, this is what is quite appealing, and actually it can even be negative. And this is why dynamic energy rates are so attractive, because people want to get a benefit. And it's also it's not a bad idea.
A great point. Lennart, could you please give more details on main benefits of dynamic energy tariffs, particularly in relation to renewable energy usage?
Yeah, so there's a very big benefit because this is a win-win situation. If you look from a high perspective, so it's very cheap for consumers. Well, you can charge for free or cool your refrigerator for free or whatever. There's free energy at 5 o'clock. But the great news is that this is not always the case, but there's a very high correlation between low prices and renewable energy production. So it's also a stimulus for people to use electricity when it's green. And it's of course a stimulus to use electricity when there's an abundance of green electricity. So this is, whenever you optimize for money in whatever system, quite often in our society we do it at the expense of the planet, unfortunately, because we don't pay for pollution, we don't pay for chopping down rainforests, whereas this actually costs. But in this case, it's a very nice exception. If you optimize for money, then you're actually doing what is good for nature, because we have so much renewable energy pushing down these prices. However, that's actually on the next slide. There's also, as a consumer, of course, a risk, because this next slide should indicate the prices of last December. Again, this is an example of the Netherlands, and now you have to look at the y-axis. Prices were somewhere around 85 cents per kilowatt hour without tax. So end user price is even higher. It's above €1. So this is the other side of the story. With every risk, there's also with every benefit, there's of course also a risk involved.
Can you tell us more about risks? What consumers do face when using dynamic tariffs?
Yes. I think actually that's a very good question. That is also on the next slide, I would guess.
No, still we have main benefits.
Yeah, the slide hasn't loaded here on my screen. There we go. So that's the interesting thing about risk. So this is an example of how the energy prices build up for an old-fashioned contract. So not with any dynamic price. So let's take the example of me. I just have a new energy contract. It's for 2 years for the same price. So what you see here on the left, the price is the commodity price. So that's what it costs to buy this electricity from my electricity supplier. Then there's a purchase fee, and then there's taxes. So the purchase fee is where the margin of the energy supplier is, and the taxes, well, of course, are just taxes. And if you look into this purchase fee, then the margin is actually only a small part of it. It's the profit that the energy supplier is taking. Then we have the fees to cover the risks, and then we have the premiums, which I could, if I say, well, I want all my energy to be green, for instance, then there's a small premium that I pay for that, for its certificates. If you look into these risks, then there is typically it's a little bit too fast, Oksana. There's typically 5. Well, one of them is not really risk. So you have credit and liquidity. So sometimes you need more money as an energy supplier, and this money could have varying interest rates. So there's a small risk there. The spot fee is not really a risk, but that's the price that you pay to be able to do trading. But it's covered in the risks. And then we have 3 risks called the balancing market risk, demand variation risk, and residual shaping risk. Well, balancing markets is, well, what I predicted what would happen tomorrow, and it actually is a little bit different. This is always happening. You can never predict the future perfectly, but it could, for instance, be that, hey, the sun is shining 50 minutes later than I thought, and then you have a risk that what I thought would happen is not happening, and I have to restore the balance. That costs money. But the others 2 are demand variation risk. That could be, I have this contract for 3 years, but 1 year from now I buy an electric car. Well, the energy supplier didn't know that at the time that I was getting my contract, and then suddenly 1 year ahead they don't have enough energy for me, so they need to buy additional energy. This could be cheaper actually than what, but it could also be more expensive. Or the other way around, I have solar panels and I use less energy after a year, and then they have a surplus. What do they do with it? They need to sell it. Could make a benefit, but could also make a loss. And then finally you have this residual shaping risk, because 1 year ahead, you don't know when my holiday will be, for instance. So when I'm on holiday, I use less energy, and there's always a little bit of risk there. Now, the interesting thing with dynamic energy tariffs is that these last 2 risks, they disappear, because what you say to an end user is, hey, I'm only giving you the rate for tomorrow. Basically only buying it for tomorrow. So this whole demand variation, that's not my problem as an energy supplier, and it's residual shaping also, because I buy everything just 1 day ahead, which is very interesting for an energy supplier, because they don't have to cover these risks, they don't have to hedge their positions, and it could be very interesting for an end user, because they don't need to pay for these risks. But of course, if you don't cover your risk, there could also be an actual risk for the end user. And this is one of the things that's, well, I wouldn't say is a problem, but it's not always mentioned with enough attention that it might be getting. I think I included a picture of a dentist somewhere.
Oh, let me see. Yeah, here it is.
So it's I don't have an insurance for the dentist, because I calculated that actually what the insurance costs me and how much cost I have for the dentist. Well, it's cheaper not to have an insurance. But of course, if something happens, if I fall down, then I need to be able to pay for whatever needs to happen then. So not having an insurance is cheap if nothing bad happens. But if something bad does happen, then it's fine if you say, okay, I have my own savings and I can cover this risk myself. But if you cannot, then yeah, this could be an issue. And we all knew that what happened with the energy prices in 2022 when Russia invaded Ukraine and the energy prices skyrocketed. I was myself quite fortunate that I had a new long-term fixed prices contract that I closed just 2 months before, because all these risks for me were covered. Whereas colleagues of mine that had actually dynamic rates, they suddenly had to pay a lot of money for their energy. So this is part of the risk. Whenever there's reward, there's also a risk, and I think it's important for consumers to be aware of this.
Great, thanks for sharing. Maybe we can put some attention on dynamic prices and system imbalances right now.
Yes, yeah, because this is something that I myself worry about a little bit, because I was actually, it's already 17 years ago, but I graduated as a control engineer, thinking about how do you stabilize systems. Let me be clear, this is, what I want to talk about, this is not a risk for the next few years. For the next few years, we're fine. I'm talking about the long-term stability of the system when we're 5, 10, probably 10, 15 years ahead. So this is, but the reason I'm bringing this up is, hey, we might make some choices now that prevent some issues later. But let's look into what a stable system is. So this this price incentive, if you have this as an end consumer, you're stimulating users to use energy at 5 o'clock in the morning or 6 or 7 or whatever, and not at 7 o'clock in the evening. And this is fine, but I started with explaining a little bit how these daily auctions work, and the price will settle at a point where demand and supply are in equilibrium. What could happen if you use this result of a negotiation as a set point? It might lead to very different behavior. And what you would actually do, this is what you could call a feed-forward system. Whereas, bear with me, because I can hear some of you, even though you're not allowed to speak, say, no, the electricity system is actually a feedback system. But this part could be seen as a feed-forward system, which is unstable. But let me explain first what I mean with feedback control. So in any control system, you want something to happen. You give a control signal. You say, hey, I want the electricity system to be stable, and this is why I give this control system an input signal. I look what is actually happening, and I measure what is happening, and I take additional action. So as an example, if you can go to the next slide, Oksana. A very simple example for control system is the temperature in a household. We all have, most of us have a desired temperature, and you can set it on your system in the house. I forgot the actual name. So for instance, here on the left, I say, I want the temperature in my household to be 20 degrees. At the right side of the system, I measure and it's actually 19 degrees. So the difference between that is 1 degree. And then the controller knows, 1 degree, that's I should send a signal to the boiler that it heats it up a little bit. And if actually I want it to be 20 degrees and it's only 11 degrees, then it's a bigger gap. And the controller might say, I give a little bit, I will ask this boiler to provide a little bit more power. So this is about the most simple control system that you could have. And it usually is just on-off control, saying, hey, boiler, give me full power or nothing. A little bit more complex is an example of a cruise control in the car. So I have a desired speed, and I have my engine thrust, and I want to drive 100 kilometers per hour. And regardless what's happening, if there's wind facing, if I'm going uphill or downhill or whatever, I have a lot of people on board. I should always drive 100 kilometers per hour. And this is feedback, because if I do this without feedback, it would be like, okay, I'm going to drive 100 kilometers per hour, so I know that I always have to apply this amount of thrust to my engine, which is, of course, is not true, because I don't know what the tire pressure is. I don't know how many people I have on board, so I have a different weight. I don't know what the wind is doing. I don't know if I'm going through a corner, whatever. So it would be without feedback. It's almost like driving blindfold. Well, not with an actual blindfold, but just assuming that you know what's that your pedal can always be in the same position. And this is what is worrying for me a little bit with when you talk about dynamic energy prices. We give a feed forward signal to an end user. We say, hey, here's your dynamic rate, but we do not confront the end user with the consequences of that signal. So there's no feedback mechanism to this end user saying, hey, actually, dear end users, all of you are using too much energy at the same time. You should reduce it, or otherwise you get a different price. Now, again, I know that some people now are thinking, no, Lennart, you're completely wrong, because there is a feedback system, and it's true. Could you show that, Oksana? So the feedback, I already demonstrated the feedback system is there. So whenever there's an imbalance in the whole energy system, then we have all these professional traders doing intraday trading. They say, hey, actually, I now have a better prediction of the solar power, have a better prediction of what my consumers are doing. In the next 10 minutes is going to be different, so I can still do some trading, or the next few hours or whatever. And if that fails, if that is not enough, then we have the transmission system operators that have a whole system of frequency control. So you have this FCR, this is like the the first responders, and they can immediately fix the frequency and then fix the balance. And if that is not enough, or it takes too long, then the second group of responders takes over. And then if that is not sufficient, then there's the third group taking over. And these are all mechanisms to say, hey, I started something, I measure something, it is not in balance, so my feedback is that I'm going to fix this feedback. However, this is a feedback system that is separated from the dynamic energy rates that you give to end users. And the fear that I have, and I'm wondering if there's people in the audience agreeing with me or disagreeing with me, because it's, of course, fine to disagree. This is not a problem at all right now, because the amount of flexibility that we have in the system is very limited. Well, we have a lot of flexibility. It's really growing. We have all these batteries, and we have all these electric cars, and we have some heat pumps that we can control. But on the total energy consumption that we have, it's very small still. So we don't have an issue, and this overreaction or underreaction that we might cause is easy to manage. But if this changes in 10 years and all the electric cars that we have become smart charging ready, and all the batteries that we have are at home, at wherever, are playing into this day ahead market, then the costs to fix this on these imbalanced markets, they could become quite significant. And the problem I have with that is the benefits of these dynamic prices come with a few consumers that are making use of this, whereas the costs are basically socialized overall. Now, you could still say that this is not a big issue, because we can fix this at the time, and we can. But I would advocate that we could already think about, we as the energy market and commercial players, that we already work towards a solution that will also work at that time. Because, can you go to the next slide, Oksana? Because I don't believe that we can fix this by saying, okay, we give end users all the input. It's completely ununderstandable. This is really complex stuff. All these energy markets explain. Well, my colleague Robert Bancho is even much better than I, but he takes 2 days to explain all these energy markets to a group of professionals. You shouldn't try to fix this by giving new price signals to end users, because it would basically mean that you might send new incentives every 5 minutes or even every second. That's impossible for people to comprehend. And already now, they had prices. Well, I always use my own wife as a comparison. She doesn't want to have anything to do with dynamic prices. This is your hobby, she says to me, and it's not worth the fight for me. And it's going to be even more complex when there will be 15-minute prices. So my feeling is that we should try to fix this in another way. And we should try to fix this by not saying, okay, I'm only going to give you dynamic prices. We should basically buy the flexibility of end users. And you can do that in different manners again, I think. Can you go to the next, the final slide? And I see a question by Rick Spitters, which is basically supporting what my proposal is as well. So it's fine to give an incentive for dynamic prices, but it would be good to be able to do a bit more control than just dynamic prices. So what I think could really work in the long run, so again, not for the first years to come. We don't have any problem there, and I'm happy with every incentive that is mobilizing flexibility. But in the long run, I think you should take this complexity away from end users, because this is a complex game. There's professional trading departments in every energy supplier. Well, every trader has 7 screens in front of him trying to keep track of all these markets. And I think there's much easier propositions that can actually lead to a better result. For instance, hey, every 5th smart charging session that you do, you get a Disney figure. I used to work at a petrol station. Disney figures are a very big motivation for people. I don't know why, but every time we had this action, everybody started saving for these Disney figures. Or what we've seen is it works very well to mobilize flexibility and behavioral change if you try to create a community and see how you do compared to a community. Or something that I think would be very simple, just as an example, hey, dear customer, if you have an electric car and we as an energy supplier or smart charging service provider or whomever are allowed to do some control, you will get a 1 cent discount on the energy rate, not just for your car, but for your entire household. And actually, if you allow us to do a lot of control, then you get a bigger discount. These are just some examples. We have plenty of time to come up with better propositions and commercial propositions. But yeah, I just wanted to take the chance here with this webinar to coin this idea, to say it might be interesting to look at other forms of buying people's flexibility or rewarding people for flexibility that I think that are on the long run provide for a more stable electricity system. I'm not too worried about the stability of the electricity system because, well, commercial parties see this coming. Of course, they see that they might have an issue with too many people overreacting on dynamic energy rates, and they have plenty of time to steer towards the right direction. I'm just saying, well, if that might be a future anyway, then it would be interesting to maybe already explore this. At the same time, I don't have a glass ball. I don't know how everything will work out, and I'm also quite curious about responses of people in the audience, because my experience is every time I talk about this with people disagreeing with me or asking me questions, they teach me something, and it helps me to shape my thoughts and come up with even better ideas. So quite curious what people think. If there are any questions, and whether people think there's some merit to what I'm saying, or that they full-heartedly disagree, and that would also be interesting, because then I can learn something. Yeah.
Lennart, I have a question.
Yes.
Why do you think bringing flexibility trading back to professional market participants is a better approach for both consumers and the grid?
Because, well, let me answer that in two ways. I think in the end, for consumers, it's better because now we're only optimizing. Well, for consumers, we're only optimizing on the day ahead prices. Whereas actually, if you would optimize over all these markets, so also intraday and flexibility, there's actually more money to be made, because, well, more markets is more incentive, is more options, and I think if enough parties monetize the flexibility of end users, well, I'm saying consumers all the time, but it doesn't have to be consumers, it can also be professional users. If enough parties do that and they monetize, then the market does its work, and there's enough competition, then I think in the end the reward for the end user is higher than when you just reward them with dynamic energy prices. That's half your answer. And I think the other half is if for the energy suppliers themselves, if they only send this feed forward signal for dynamic prices, then they might, especially when there's more flexibility, run into higher costs fixing the errors they created that are the result of this feed forward system. So also for them, there's better margins to be made, especially on electric vehicle charging. This is what I've been doing for the past 15 years, smart charging on electric vehicles. I think that energy suppliers that tap into this, that say we are not just an energy supplier, we make sure that we can also provide our customers with charge stations and combine smart charging with smart energy. I think the energy suppliers that are really going for this idea and that are very active, these are the energy suppliers that we still know in 15 years. I haven't calculated this, but I calculated a little bit. I think the financial benefit that you can create for your customer and for yourself are so big that other energy suppliers just might go out of business. But that's quite a bold statement, and it's probably too bold. But I do think there's a very, very large benefit to combine smart charging with smart energy.
Okay, I think that we are coming to our Q&A session, and there is a question from our audience. What mistakes do companies in Europe often make when they start using dynamic tariffs, and how to fix or avoid them?
Let mistakes do they often make? Well, I'm not sure if there's mistakes. I do see some. Well, no, let me put it like this. I think what I see is interesting is that, for instance, there's this company in the Netherlands that I know that say we have smart charging on dynamic energy rates, and they have something called smarter charging. I'm not sure if that's the right terminology, but they already take this next step. So they do keep these dynamic energy rates, and they say, well, actually, you can have a surplus if we can also do, we can use your charge session to do optimization on different imbalancing markets. I think that's not so much a mistake being made, but it's just being smarter. Basically in line with what I've already been saying. I think a very big challenge. This again is not really a mistake, but a very big challenge is the user interaction. I think there's a group of innovators that are very eager to work with dynamic energy tariffs, and that play with their phone and their apps and their home batteries, etc., that are really into this. And well, all the people that I know that have dynamic energy rates fall into this category. I think there's a very large group of people that don't want to be bothered with all this nonsense, and they just want power to come out of their sockets. And I think it will be a very big challenge to, well, whether you do it via dynamic rates or via buying the flexibility of it anyway, to also make to attract these people to also flexibilize their energy consumption. It's not really an answer to the question, but it's also because I cannot really point out mistakes. I can point out what the challenges are.
We have another question from our LinkedIn audience.
Mm-hmm.
Which change in daily energy use patterns do you envision concerning flexible tariffs?
Well, let me also answer that in two ways. So first of all, the incentives. I think if we keep dynamic energy tariffs as they is, then we're gonna have the more solar and wind power that we have in Europe, the bigger the price differences will be. And that's what we already see now. We do plan to build a lot more renewable energy, so it is expected, and was also a report coming out that confirmed that the expectancy that the price differences over the day will increase. Well, very simply, if there's sun and there's wind, energy will be almost for free. And if there's not, so we had this period in Europe in the last, at least in Western Europe, I haven't checked the weather forecast everywhere in Europe, last December, that there was hardly any sun because it was cloudy, mist, and there was hardly any wind, and we had very high prices for 2 weeks. So these differences will be very high. What you could expect is that I think the majority of consumption, making coffee, making foods, putting on your oven isn't really that flexible. And even doing there's not much to be expected there. I guess people, it's not that much energy, and it's very hard to say, okay, well, we'll cook my dinner in the middle of the night. I do think that there are some consumers in the household, like an electric car for the people that have one, like a water boiler, that are quite flexible. Like a washing machine, although a washing machine doesn't really make a big impact. I think if I charge my car once, then I can do my laundry for half a year. It's especially those new consumers, heating and flexibility in cars that will make the biggest impact. But then, of course, people, well, if they can make a profit, quite often people do it. So why not do your laundry when the energy prices are cheap? You will not get rich of it, but it's definitely something that you can do and that people are already doing. And then, of course, there is a trend towards home batteries. Right now, well, I know people disagree with me on that, but right now the business case is still not very good for households. But this could also change, of course, if we have new inventions and breakthroughs in battery development, and batteries again drop significantly in price. then this could be very interesting to charge your battery when there's an abundance of renewable energy, and then use this energy when energy is expensive, or when energy is expensive the entire day. And this is also something that you might do with your car in a few years from now. I'm not as optimistic as some people that we can do vehicle to grid on large scale tomorrow or next year. I think it will take another 5 to maybe even 10 years before we can apply this on mass scale. But when you can, it's that's of course also something that you can do to optimize your own household consumption with your electric car, if it's there.
Okay, great, thank you. I think that we run out of questions, so thank you for your time with us today. The recording will be here, so if you'd like, you can come back to what we were talking, mostly Lennart, about. And if you have any questions after the webinar, just please email them, and we will do our best to answer. So once again, thank you for today, and looking forward to hear your feedback and your thoughts.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.